In the middle of the Pacific, there is an island that looks like something out of a movie. A tropical paradise that, in addition to its perfect beaches, has been the scene of bloody battles in the Second World War, the setting for unbelievable stories, and today is home to a silent, frightening, and deadly invasion that no one has been able to stop so far. The name of this island? Guam. Strategically located in the middle of the Pacific, it has passed through the hands of Spain, Japan, and today belongs to the United States. What was supposed to be a tranquil and peaceful piece of paradise ended up becoming an open-air laboratory of how a single invasive species can turn a place upside down. We're talking about a brown tree snake that has taken over the territory, exterminating almost all the local birds and transforming the island into a silent and, for many, even slightly frightening scene. Curious to know how this happened? Then stick around, because today, Bello Mundo is taking you to Guam, from historical battles to the ecological disaster caused by snakes. Number 1. Location and geographical data. Before we talk about snakes, let's put Guam on the map. The island is about 544 square kilometers, not the largest, but its position in the Western Pacific makes it a strategic point. It is approximately 2,500 kilometers east of the Philippines and is part of the Mariana Archipelago. The difference is that, while its northern neighbors are a commonwealth associated with the United States, Guam is a de facto American territory. The geography here is quite varied. In the north, a plateau of coral limestone forms impressive coastal cliffs, while in the south, volcanic peaks covered by tropical forests create a totally different look. It's a rare contrast, a small island that mixes coral cliffs and volcanic hills in one place. And if you like diving, Guam has a special feature. It's close to the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in the entire ocean. We're talking about an underwater abyss, more than 10,000 meters deep right next door. The climate, as you might expect, is tropical and humid. Temperatures are between 24 and 30 degrees Celsius, divided into two distinct seasons: the dry season from December to June, and the rainy season from July to November. And yes, typhoons can appear at any time, especially during the wet season. Throughout history, Guam has faced some of these monstrous storms, such as Super Typhoon Pongsona, which destroyed much of the island in 2002. Number 2. History. The history of this piece of land in the middle of the ocean is as turbulent as its geography. Long before Europeans set eyes on Guam, the Chamorro people had lived on the island for over 4,000 years. Everything changed in 1521, when the Portuguese navigator Ferdinand Magellan, in the service of Spain, landed there during his voyage of circumnavigation. But it wasn't until 1565 that Guam was officially annexed to the Spanish Empire, becoming a key point on the route of the famous Manila Galleon. This galleon was the one that connected Acapulco in Mexico to the Philippines, carrying spices, silver, and valuable goods. And Guam was an obligatory stop along the way. For more than 300 years, the island functioned as a strategic entrepot, receiving ships for refueling and serving as a base for Christian missionaries, mainly Jesuits, who converted a large part of the local population. But then came the Spanish-American War in 1898. The United States defeated Spain and, as part of the peace agreement, Guam was handed over to the Americans. But this change of flag didn't exactly mean peace. In December 1941, shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan invaded Guam. Japanese rule lasted almost 3 years, until July 1944, when the United States retook the island in one of the most brutal campaigns of the Pacific Theater. And this is where one of the craziest stories of this place comes in: the Japanese soldier Shoichi Yokoi. Yokoi was a Japanese soldier who, instead of surrendering, chose to hide in the island's forests. For almost 30 years, he lived in a cave, only going out at night to look for food and avoiding any human contact. He was only discovered in 1972. When he returned to Japan, he was welcomed as a hero, even if he was completely bewildered to have survived while his comrades died in the war. After the Second World War, Guam once again became United States territory and became a key player in the Cold War. The island was used as a base of operations for spies and refugees, and Andersen Air Force Base, which had already served as the starting point for the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, remained active, keeping Guam on the radar of global tensions. Number 3. United States territory status. Many people are confused when they hear about Guam because the island is an unincorporated territory of the United States. This means that the inhabitants are American citizens, but they don't have the right to vote for president or have full representation in Congress. Strange, right? In practice, the island governs itself internally, with its own governor and local assembly, but it depends financially and militarily on the United States. This creates a somewhat complicated relationship. On the one hand, the presence of American military bases guarantees jobs and investment, but it also brings criticism from those who fear the environmental and cultural impact of this coexistence. What's more, Guam has practically become a giant fixed aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific. The Andersen military base plays a strategic role in American operations in Asia, and this doesn't go unnoticed. Japanese military personnel and tourists dominate the local scene, turning the island into a very cosmopolitan place, despite its small size. And if everything seems very peaceful and organized these days, believe me, there is an unexpected invader who has radically changed local daily life. And this time, it's not enemy troops or armed forces, but snakes that keep multiplying. Are you curious? Hold on, because we're going to explain this story in a moment. Number 4. The Chamorro Culture. Despite having spent centuries under Spanish rule and then under strong American influence, the Chamorro identity lives on. From traditional crafts to religious celebrations, the people of Guam maintain deep ties to their roots and are keen to preserve their heritage. The language is a reflection of this cultural fusion. Chamorro, the native language, has Austronesian origins but has received many words from Spanish. English dominates everyday life, especially in schools, the media, and business. With the island attracting many Japanese and Korean tourists, it is not uncommon to find menus and signs written in these languages too. Guam is a linguistic melting pot, a direct result of its history full of encounters and disputes. In the local markets, handicrafts follow ancestral traditions. Visitors will find hand-woven baskets, ornaments made from shells and coconut fibers, as well as typical necklaces that carry techniques handed down for generations. Even with modernization, Chamorro villages still hold events and rituals to keep the spirit of the original culture alive. Number 5. Religion and beliefs. In terms of religion, the Catholic Church is in the majority, the result of Spanish missionary work. But there are also Protestants, evangelical religions, and influences from indigenous shamanism, although on a smaller scale. Historic buildings, such as the Basilica Cathedral in Hagåtña, the capital, reflect the successive layers of cultural influences. In addition to Catholicism, there are Protestant groups and some ancient beliefs linked to ancestral spirits, called Tao Tao Mo Na. In some regions, people avoid disrespecting certain places considered sacred or inhabited by the spirits of ancestors. One of the most famous stories is the legend of the two lovers, the Romeo and Juliet of Guam. Every culture has its stories of forbidden love, and Guam is no exception. The local version, which mixes romance and tragedy, involves a young native girl and a Chamorro warrior. Legend has it that in the 17th century, the daughter of an influential family was promised in marriage to a Spanish captain. But her heart already had an owner, a young man from the island. To escape the arranged marriage, the two fled inland and tried to hide. But the Spanish soldiers, sent by the girl's father, didn't give up until they cornered them at the top of a cliff. With no way out, the lovers tied each other by the hair, exchanged one last look, and threw themselves into the sea. The place where the couple jumped became one of Guam's most visited tourist attractions, Two Lovers Point. The lookout point from where you can admire the immense blue Pacific still carries the weight of this story, a Romeo and Juliet on the other side of the world. Number 6. Where the sun rises first in the United States. It may be almost 10,000 kilometers from the American mainland, but it still carries a curious title. It's the first place in the United States to see the sun rise. And this isn't just a geographical curiosity. The locals and the tourist industry love to emphasize this detail in their promotional materials. But it's not just the locals who value this privileged position. The military bases ensure the constant presence of thousands of soldiers and their families. In addition, many retired veterans choose this tropical paradise to live in, exchanging the hustle and bustle of the United States for a more relaxed pace of life, exclusive condominiums, and pleasant weather all year round. The strong military presence even influences tourism. Practically all attractions, from museums to boat trips, offer discounts for military personnel and veterans. For those who like shopping, there's an extra attraction, tax exemption. The result? Shopping centers and outlets packed with designer clothes, electronics, and souvenirs free of charge. Even the famous Kmart chain has a special feature here. It houses the largest unit in the world. A gigantic store that is so famous it has become a tourist attraction. And it's not just the Americans who make their presence felt here. Japan, which occupied the island during the Second World War, maintains a strong connection with the region. For Japanese tourists, this paradisiacal destination serves as a closer and more accessible alternative to Hawaii. Just a 3-hour flight from Tokyo. The flow of visitors is impressive. More than 900,000 arrive every year, accounting for more than 70% of local tourism. This relationship between the two countries is not limited to tourism, but also has historical ties, such as the soldier who went into hiding at the beginning of the video. To this day, hundreds of Japanese visitors make a point of visiting the replica of the bunker where he lived. The original site was destroyed by a storm, but the story lives on and continues to attract tourists. Number 7. Gastronomy. No trip is complete without exploring the local food, and Guam has a very interesting menu. The island's cuisine is a fusion of influences from the Pacific, Southeast Asia, and Spanish colonization, resulting in unique dishes. Kilagan is one of the most popular, a recipe that can include chicken, shrimp, or fish, always marinated in lemon, onion, and spices, and served cold. Another classic is red rice with akiote, which accompanies almost every meal. And you can't forget the Chamorro-style barbecue, which is very reminiscent of Filipino cuisine. With the abundant sea all around, seafood is an essential part of the local diet. Fresh fish is always a good choice, whether grilled, raw, or in typical stews. But enough about food, because now we're going to get to know the unmannerly penetrator who devastated the island. Number 8. The snake invasion. The brown tree snake is not one of those animals that just appear. This semi-venomous snake, native to Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Melanesia, measures up to 3 meters in length and has nocturnal and arboreal habits. The problem is that, as well as hanging from trees, it also loves electricity poles, roofs, and wiring. The big question is, how did this intruder end up here? Everything suggests that it arrived clandestinely on military supply ships after the Second World War, and it was enough to turn the balance of the island into chaos. What happens when you put a voracious predator in an environment that has never had snakes before? Destruction. Before this creeping invasion, the island's forests were full of native birds, but in just a few decades, these snakes have simply detonated the bird population. Of the 12 species that existed, 10 have become completely extinct, and the remaining 2 only survive in caves or protected urban areas. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the snakes began to multiply uncontrollably. In some periods, it is estimated that there were 40 to 50 snakes per hectare. To get an idea of the impact, imagine walking through a forest where every square meter there is a snake watching. Without the birds, the ecosystem has collapsed. Spiders and insects, which used to be controlled by their natural predators, have started to multiply unchecked. On some of the island's trails, webs took over the vegetation, transforming tropical landscapes into scenes worthy of horror films. But they weren't satisfied with just birds. These snakes have learned to eat practically anything: lizards, rodent chicks, migratory bird eggs, and even human food scraps. There have been reports of residents finding snakes coiled up in garbage bags or in pieces of barbecue meat in the open air. A real horror show for those who aren't used to it. And the problems didn't stop there. Number 9. Impacts. Perhaps the biggest impact was the local extinction of several birds. Some native species only managed to survive because they were transferred to other snake-free islands, or else kept in captivity to avoid total loss. But if you think that the absence of birds was the only damage, you're quite wrong. Birds played an essential role in balancing the ecosystem. Many trees depended on them to spread their seeds and renew the vegetation. Without this natural cycle, the forest has aged, lost biodiversity, and become more vulnerable to pests and diseases. The impact was not only on the fauna, but also on the island's landscape, which was slowly transformed with less regeneration of trees and shrubs. And as if that wasn't problematic enough, the snakes also started creating another kind of chaos. They are masters at climbing poles and getting tangled in electrical wiring, causing frequent short circuits and blackouts. It sounds like a joke, but a considerable part of the power outages on the island happen because these snakes have decided to venture into the cables. The situation has become so common that maintenance teams have been trained specifically to deal with this problem. Number 10. Control attempts. When they realized the extent of the damage, authorities and environmentalists sprang into action to try to control the invasion. Various strategies have been tested over the years. Special fences were installed in some areas to prevent the snakes from crawling into the few remaining bird areas. Chemical poisons and repellents were applied, but there was always the risk of affecting other species. Researchers have even tried to find viruses or parasites that only attack snakes, but so far nothing has proved really effective. One of the most unusual tactics involved dead rats stuffed with paracetamol, a common drug for humans but lethal to these snakes. To ensure that the rats remained trapped in the trees, They released the baits with mini parachutes. Yes, you didn't read that wrong. It was a real attempt to reduce the snake population using poisoned rodents that literally fell out of the sky. Despite the effort and the millions of dollars invested over the years, completely eradicating the species from the island seems like an impossible mission. The snakes continue to reproduce unchecked. They know how to hide in the most unlikely places, and without natural predators, they continue to dominate their territory. Today, the main strategy is to try to minimize the damage and prevent the plague from spreading to other Pacific islands. The biggest fear? That these snakes will reach Hawaii, where the ecological impact could be catastrophic. To prevent this, inspections at ports and airports have been stepped up, with sniffer dogs trained specifically to detect snakes hidden in cargo and luggage. The only thing left to do now is to put things right, since there was no prevention or immediate action when the problem started. Did you know about this island? Let us know in the comments which fact surprised or outraged you the most. If you liked this content, you already know. Leave a like, subscribe to Bello Mundo, and activate the bell so you don't miss any new videos. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.